Welcome to Taiwan Talks. I'm Albert Chiu. Since Joe Biden's 2021 inauguration, U.S. China relations have been in the global spotlight due to factors including the trade war, the Russia-Ukrainian conflict, COVID-19, and espionage concerns. Recent instances like the denials of entry to Chinese students at the Washington Dulles International Airports and the enactment of Florida's EP307 Act, barring Chinese graduate students from 12 public university labs, have raised questions about national security and academia. Joining us today are Tso Chen-dong, National Taiwan University Department of Political Science professor, and Vincent Chao, Taipei City Councilor from DPP. A very warm welcome to both on the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Recently, China's ambassador to the U.S., Xie Feng, lodged a formal protest with the U.S., highlighting that numerous Chinese students have been deported back to China by U.S. Customs at the Washington Dulles International Airports on espionage suspicions and related grounds. These students were explicitly told, "You are not welcome." How should we understand the U.S. actions and what are the deeper issues at play? Chen-dong.
Yeah, I think this is a process of a downward spiral. Yeah, because both countries are using counter-espionage efforts to detect and deter people-to-people exchange. And such efforts, of course, are rooted in their national security concern, but have a wider repercussion on the society as a whole. So I think this is something that we should be aware of. And it actually becomes a factor that really deter many people who want to visit the other side for just a general purpose or just for academic or for business or even for family purpose.
Vincent, do you think that this is just a random instance that the Chinese international students are not trustworthy to the U.S. Customs? So what's your observation on this matter?
I don't think we should necessarily extrapolate on one incident and to say that Chinese students are seen as untrustworthy. I don't think the U.S. government sees it to be the case. Certainly, the numbers of U.S. students studying in the United States, well, it's slightly gone down, but it hasn't gone down significantly. So, and but I do think that this is part of a pattern, I think, of growing I'll say identification or suspicion and then identification and then, in this case, for example, the barment of several Chinese students that may be seen as having links to more sensitive areas of research and technology. I mean, we can't forget that there is and has been quite a systemic and targeted approach that the PRC government has taken, including through the 1,000 Talents program and so forth, to get into sensitive U.S. technologies, where they're talking about aerospace, about high-tech semiconductors, all the way to more defense-related industries, and to bring these talents and this know-how, particularly the technical knowledge, back to China, where a lot of them have been found to have engaged in dual use or civil and military research purposes. So I think the U.S. is much more aware of this sort of systemic behavior. I think they're much more committed to combating particularly systems-based programs. And I think this is a reflection of that. Now, lastly, I'll say this. I don't think suspicion should necessarily fall on individual Chinese students, and certainly I don't think that's the case. But in areas that the U.S. does take quite seriously, I expect that we'll see these sort of actions continue, if not intensify, in the years to come.
Well, actually, Vincent mentioned about this strengthened kind of competitive attitude towards the possible suspicious Chinese students. We can see the evidence, some evidence of that in Florida. Florida actually has enacted SB846 Act, barring Chinese graduate students from accessing labs at 12 public universities. Moreover, Chinese international students and immigrants face restrictions in Europe and the U.S., with Canada denying entry to some Chinese students over national security concerns and subjecting them to security screens. So does skepticism towards China extend into the academia sphere? And we probably will see that more and more in the future. Chen-dong.
Yeah, I think first of all, we need to clarify who has that skepticism, who is worried or concerned about Chinese students. Definitely, the concern are not from the professors. Professors in Florida, for example, in University of Florida, in general welcome Chinese students. Chinese students constitute about one third of the graduate students there in University of Florida, and many of them are very important for the professors to conduct their research. So I think at least for these professors, they are not concerned about China. What are the concerns coming from? Basically, I think I would say politicians or people in the policy circles, they take that as a target of concern. And they probably, some of them also probably want to play up this issue for political gain. Of course, I understand that many people in the United States are concerned about the threat China posed toward the country, and there are really issues of friction between these two countries. However, I would say that for at least in the academic sphere, these are one of the areas where we see a mutual gain for both countries. Yeah, so I think basically the professors or the students have to cope with this new situation. And one of the ways they could do that is to just work around this regulation. For example, this 846 SB 846 regulation actually restricts professors from hiring Chinese students to do to serve as their research assistants, but they could still hire these students under H1B. So this is one way Chinese students can still get funding from their professors. Yeah, another thing that they can do is just to make it other ways. For example, they could they could still hire students who are self-funded. So students with self-funding can still come to the school, can still get themselves educated and obtain their degree from the universities. Of course, they can also find ways, as I said, under H1B category to work outside campus. So these are the ways the students can cope with the new situation. These could also help the professors to work around this regulation.
So now actually, the Florida SB 846 Act is enacted. It should be too surprising because the current governor is Ron DeSantis, belongs to a Republican. He's also kind of aligned with the stance of Trump. But we also cannot forget that in many authoritarian countries, for example, in Taiwan, in old good days, like a lot of students in the States, they joined KMT, right? At that time, they had the application to so-called maybe supervise or kind of make a reports to the party center about what's going on in the United States. And we also know that this is also the case for the Chinese students, studying in the United States. So would you say, maybe Vincent second, would you say that those students from China, they join the CCP, they would do something that's anti the principle of American belief? For example, attacks people who say something bad about CCP in the States, kind of go against the freedom of speech that's widely accepted in the United States.
I don't think the United States government should treat Chinese students or students from PRC as a one category, because people have different beliefs, people have different behaviors. So the government should impose regulations based on specific behaviors rather than to treat these students
as a category.
Yeah, as one single category. Yeah, so if these behaviors, so as you mentioned, report to their party caucus within the campus, or to punish to punish those who say something ill about CCP, then that could violate U.S. law. That could the government, the U.S. government can, in that case, bring these people who violated the law into justice. But if without specified and very clear evidence, I don't think the government should just prohibit them from coming to the States or working as a teaching assistant or research assistants.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, I have first-hand experience in this issue because when I was studying in Canada for my undergrad degree, I remember during the RLC National Day, I had held up this RLC flag and I had worn this shirt with, the RLC flag on it, and I had went to buy bubble tea, which is, of course, my favorite pastime in Toronto. And Chinese students were there, and they're very upset at me and started yelling at me, harassing me, and saying that RLC doesn't exist and so forth. So, I think we have to be quite clear-eyed. Of course, it's wrong to lump all Chinese students together, as Professor Tso said. But at the same time, there is a series of systemic behavior that seems to be at odds with not only academic freedom, but also the freedom of speech, I think, on campus and elsewhere. So I think we have to be vigilant in terms of the risks and costs that it entails. But at the same time, we also have to be knowledgeable that, yes, I mean, there is no single category for all PRC students, and that, analysis should be based on evidence, fact, and certainly past behavior and so forth. So with that being said, I do think that that is the approach the U.S. has taken. I think they've been very, targeted rather than systemic. I haven't seen certainly any systemic behavior to warrant saying that, they don't want Chinese students to come. But I do think that they're quite wary about specific fields or sectors that may hold national security implications.
Well, in fact, with the nearly 290,000 Chinese international students in the U.S., constituting, as you mentioned, 1/3 of all the international students in the States, and also representing the largest source of international students in the U.S. for the past 15 consecutive years. So my next question for Chen-dong is that, do you think the restriction on the entry of the Chinese international students really significantly affect U.S. technological developments or even the economy there?
Of course, because top talents are recruited all over the world. So if you want to have advanced technology development, you probably need to not only develop it domestically, indigenously, but also to attract top talents to work for you. So if the U.S. cannot continue to recruit top students from PRC, I think that would affect the U.S. ability to continue to innovate. Yeah. Of course, there are other ways to mitigate that shortage, but still, that's an important way of continuous innovation.
Vincent?
I don't think universities and colleges in the U.S. are really feeling that pinch. I mean, we can talk about all these so-called restrictions or pressure that Chinese students face, but the truth of the matter is that numbers haven't really gone down. I mean, the year prior, I think, was about 290,000 as well, and certainly this is about par with the pre-COVID number. So we haven't seen numbers decrease in a significant way. I think it's been like 1%, if not less. But it's been actually quite interesting because I think that China, as the top source of foreign students, is probably only going to hold true for this year, if not last year being the last, because India is rising very, very fast. I mean, India, we've seen a year-on-year increase about 25 to 35% over past years. And I think they're about 50,000 now, and they could likely exceed 300,000 if not this year, if not next year. So I don't think that universities and colleges in the U.S. are necessarily pressed for students, particularly the elite ones. I think they have plenty of international students to go around. But of course, I mean, any effort, I think, to be inclusive and to have a diverse student body ultimately, I think, aids students as a whole. I just don't necessarily think that there is a lot of pressure from U.S. college administrators and university administrators saying that we have to open up our borders even more to Chinese students, otherwise we're not going to be able to fill the student body. I mean, that may be the case here in Taiwan in terms of domestic students, but I don't think that's the case in the United States.
For the one thing is that, like what you mentioned, United States universities are really top of everything, right, all over the world. So a lot of students, not only from China, but also from other countries, would really to attend the universities over there. The second thing is that, however, for the Chinese students, when they enter the United States, they really have to learn, maybe we can say this in this way, is the more civilized way of communicating with each other, freedom of speech, and also respect the basic principle out there. For example, you have to respect your colleagues or even students, even though he or she does not agree with your opinions.
Well, Albert, I just want to quickly add on to that because you raised a good point. And educational flows, are two-way street. I mean, it's not just about Chinese students, whether they have a willingness to go to U.S. or whether the U.S. wants to take more Chinese students. It's also about the atmosphere within China itself. And what we've seen under Xi Jinping is that there is greater suspicion of the United States, a greater suspicion of students that have gone to the United States and taken training there. And so that does create a dampening effect. I was recently reading a New York Times article about many of these opinions expressed by Chinese parents about their students going to U.S. educational fairs, the U.S. colleges, universities, and the concern about how that fits in with Xi Jinping or the PRC, CCP's worldview. So there is a dampening effect that's taking place, and that's not necessarily solely because of the United States, but I think that effect exists within China as well.
Mm-hmm. And also, this question is for Chen-dong, is that U.S. multinational corporations are growing increasingly cautious of Chinese international students following reports. I mean, there are official reports of their involvements in data theft and intellectual property disputes in the U.S. So if we don't go too far, so what is Xi Jinping trying to achieve by using Chinese students for this sort of espionage activities?
I think this is way too far. I think such a problem or such a concern has been there even before Xi Jinping took power in 2012. So I think some of them, I would say the major reason for this conduct or misconduct is because of the pursuit for profit. Chinese companies want to grasp technology from other companies, and usually the way they do it is to recruit employees from other companies. So not necessarily students, but mostly employees. So the employee turnover actually becomes a way of technology transfer and technology learning, or you can say that it's a way of technology theft. So, but anyway, I think when it comes to international relations, the issue of forced technology transfer has been in discussion between United States and PRC for some years. And during Trump administration, the two governments signed agreements, the so-called first phase trade agreements, to trying to reduce the scope and the degree of forced technology transfer. But there are also discussions with regard to how far the so-called forced technology transfer violated the current international norms or international regulations. I would say this is really a new issue in international arena, and governments are trying to figure out a way to regulate it, because before there are some countries who also do that, but that was before the WTA was established in 1995. So after 1995, that kind of conduct has been reduced or be limited. But with the rapid emergence of PRC as a new technology powerhouse, that kind of issue re-emerge as an important one for countries to protect their own technology.
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, U.S. officials and intelligence agencies have also issued warnings about China's growing interference in global elections, mirroring Russia's previous online manipulation strategies. Although Xi Jinping has reportedly assured Joe Biden that China will not interfere in the 2024 U.S. presidential election, U.S. authorities remain on high alerts. So, Vincent, former U.S. intelligence officials alleged that over the past few decades, Chinese intelligence agents have penetrated numerous departments within the Taiwanese government, gathering detailed information on the escalating military cooperation between the U.S. and its Asian allies. Beyond China's extensive intelligence gathering and infiltration activity targeting the U.S., Are there insights into China's techniques for intelligence connection and infiltration in Taiwan and other nations?
Well, I think we can go far beyond allegations. I mean, there has been numerous court cases that have been sentenced here in Taiwan about espionage, about intelligence buying and bribery and recruiting military officers to spy for the CCP. I mean, this has gone on again and again, and this hasn't been a partisan issue at all. I mean, we've seen this during KMT administrations, seen this during TPP administrations. And I think the key point is that we have to understand that actions that the CCP are going to take are going to be consistent with their stated objectives for Taiwan, which is the peaceful unification in their view, if possible, but by force if necessary. And so, of course, peacefully would be the ideal scenario for them. And so there is a natural inclination or tendency to use various tools within their toolbox to bring that about, whether through penetration of our government ministries, the acquisition of sensitive information, or through by recruiting Taiwanese officials, including military officers, for their cause. And so it's unfortunate, but I think what my personal worry is twofold. First one is that, we're only scratching the surface. There's some evidence to point out that, that this is much more systemic than people may believe initially. But the second, I think, part is related to this, which is that we don't actually give very harsh prison sentences for people that have been caught in violation of espionage or other acts here in Taiwan, and certainly not to the degree where we see a major deterrent capability forced there. So I guess all in all, I would probably say that there are concerns strongly within the United States, but probably also within other democracies about the scale of PRC intelligence gathering efforts here in Taiwan, particularly within government and our military. And I think ultimately it's important for us, whether for our administration, government, or for judiciary, to be able to crack down strongly against these actions and ensure that our officials, our officers are loyal to the ROC, loyal to Taiwan, and are ready to stand against PRC actions to recruit them or to buy information off them.
But also on the other side of the same equation to you, Chen-dong, is that there's a freedom of speech in Taiwan, right? So when somebody is accused of being, as an agent for CCP or even PRC, but actually he's simply just saying a voice his own political stance or maybe whatever ideology he or she believes. So might this type of crackdown, like what Vincent mentioned, possibly violates the freedom of speech in Taiwan?
Of course, that's an issue of concern. So the government should be very cautious in imposing, in finding those so-called possible agents for CCP, because if the government is too heavy-handed on this, that could really irritate the general public and to reduce or to hurt the legitimacy of such a agent hunting effort by the government. So that is not good for our national security. Also, I would say that the PRC has done more domestically in enhancing its protection against so-called espionage behavior than doing collection of intelligence or other critical information overseas. Because I think at the moment the PRC government is probably more concerned about so-called political security. So that's why we see some new efforts by the national security agencies in PRC to educate citizens in PRC with regard to protecting their national security.
Okay, now let's shift the topic a little bit by talking about the political refugees from China. In late January, Taiwan deported 3 Chinese nationals to Kuala Lumpur who had arrived from Malaysia intending to seek asylum in the U.S. via Taiwan. Taiwan's lack of refugee law necessitates returning individuals to their last departure point in such cases. Human rights issue is number one. NGO are advocating for the legislature to quickly pass legislation formalizing asylum claims in Taiwan. So what is your take on this matter?
Well, let me quickly say, Albert, before I get into this, that there is a double-tiered standard when we prosecute issues under, for example, the anti-infiltration law, which is that you can advocate on behalf of the CCP or PRC. That's no problem at all. That's part of your freedom of speech. But you can't take funding and money and support from the PRC or CCP as you do so. So there's a double-tiered standard here that I think has been quite effective in the past. Now, in terms of the refugee law, I can't speak on behalf of the DPP on this issue. I'm no longer a spokesperson, but I certainly can speak on behalf of myself. And I do think that we need to think about this law as a matter of necessity, because it is true that we continue to see cases again and again of refugees here in Taiwan. When I was a reporter in 2009, actually, I covered multiple cases of this, including, for example, refugees stashed in fishing boats that had returned, for example, to Yilan. And were stuck in legal limbo without being able to work or without being able to do anything because of the lack of legal protections that they have. So I think the new legislature is a divided legislature, but that gives opportunities, I think, for political parties to work across party lines to find creative ways of dealing with, for example, a refugee law while maintaining, I think, the core concerns that many people would have, including on cross-strait issues and on national security concerns.
Well, actually, also last year in August, a guy called Chen Shiming, he's known for organizing events to commemorate the June 4th incidents and alleging persecution by China, managed to secure asylum in Canada after an unscheduled departure in Taiwan. This outcome was due to prior arrangements made with Canada. So considering this, what approach should Taiwan adopt for future instances of asylum seekers transiting through this territory? Chen-dong.
As a general policy, I think Taiwan should provide humanitarian assistance to those who transit through Taiwan. That's the least we can do because humanitarian cause is a universal one, and every government should do that to help those who do have those needs. So that should be written in the law, or at least in some sort of regulations, so that all government agencies involved can have clear guidance in doing that.
Okay.